etc., and a warm welcome to all our distinguished guests, esteemed partners, and friends of Yayasan Hasanah. We are very glad that you could join us here today physically and virtually. My name is Natasha Nazmi, Senior Executive here under the Monitoring, Learning, Evaluation and Knowledge team. And ILMU Hasanah are our knowledge sharing events that we host for our CEO partners, stakeholders, as well as members of the public on a range of relevant topics led by sectoral experts and thought leaders. We believe that continuous learning is essential and that there should be no barriers to learning. A bit of logistic as we get on. If you see any vacant seat in front of you, do feel free to move up to the front, and the restrooms are located outside. Kindly switch your mobile phones to silent mode so we can all enjoy the session without interruption. Please note that today's session is being recorded and will be available later on our YouTube channel. Finally, if you have any feedback, we would love to hear from you. QR codes are available throughout Gurukul for you to scan and share your thoughts. For those joining virtually, the link for feedback is available in the chat box. Today's agenda begins with welcoming remarks by Tuan Siti Kamaria Ahmad Subki, Managing Director and Trustee of Yayasan Hasanah. This will be followed by a presentation by Mr. Muhammad Faizal bin Abdul Hamid, Ketua Penolong Pengarah Kanan National Disaster Management Agency or NADMA. Thus, Malaysia continues to face increasingly severe and recurring disasters, from record-breaking floods to man-made crises that causes widespread displacement and economic loss. This conversation will explore how we can empower communities to better prepare, respond effectively, and recover stronger, while co-developing inclusive and scalable strategies for long-term resilience. So afterwards, you will have an opportunity to engage directly with our panel during the Q&A session. Please join us afterwards for light refreshment. We would love for you to stay. Now, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Puan Siti Kamaria to the stage. Assalamualaikum and very good afternoon to everyone. I think we probably invited the storm into the room. And so today's ILMU Hasanah session on community-centric approaches to disaster preparedness is fitting to the topic. And just before coming here, the EDU team and I were just talking about how the Sarawak flood will really impacting our students in Sarawak. Their passing rate, because they're not able to go to the school, the locations in which they have to take their SPM exam. So the impact is getting more and more real and touching everyday citizens' life. And I think it feels like yesterday that we had the great flood of 2014, in which people don't realize the impact was so severe, and we were so shocked that during that time, and a decade later, the floods have become a lot more severe, a lot more shocking, but to a certain extent, we have become very desensitized. And every year, we expect flood to happen. It's almost as if it's an accepted fact for many of us civilians and policymakers alike. So that's why I think collectively at Hasanah, we do want to learn from our collective experiences and see where we can influence policy and prepare better. And I know we spoke about nature-based solutions, and we spoke about learning better, documenting our learnings, but I think we also need to influence to make sure that we also walk the talk. So beyond the statistics, the events truly lay bare how uneven different communities experience flood and how differently they recover. Whether it's the flood-prone villages in Kelantan, indigenous settlements in Sabah, Sarawak, or high-density flats in urban Selangor, one thing is clear: disaster affects everyone, but not everyone is equally prepared. And this is where community-led preparedness becomes not just important, but very urgent. So at Hasanah, we're committed to addressing this gap by supporting both immediate humanitarian relief and long-term capacity building. Through the Humanitarian Disaster Relief Fund, HDR Fund, we strive to empower civil society organizations to act swiftly but collectively. And what's more important from our learnings is that strengthening the readiness and resilience of the community that we serve is the most important part of all. So today's session is surface-grounded, practical strategies that bridge the urban-rural divide in disaster readiness, and we hope to unpack both global practices. So I hope many of us, I think our speakers also work locally and internationally, so we could hopefully share some of these best practices that you've seen in other countries, so that we could implement more of these local solutions and put people, especially the most vulnerable, at the center of our disaster response systems. So with that, without further ado, it is my great honor and pleasure to welcome our esteemed panelists, each bringing a critical perspective to today's dialogue and spending their precious time with us today. So thank you and welcome Encik Muhammad Faizal bin Abdul Hamid, Ketua Penolong Pengarah Kanan National Disaster Management Agency NADMA, Terima kasih Encik Faizal, of the Prime Minister's Department. Will also be delivering a special presentation on the post-mortem of the Monsoon Timur Laut 2024-2025. His insights will be very valuable to shed light on the challenges and areas for improvement in the mobilization of NGO Rakan Nakma and Rakan Nakma Academia and the effectiveness of coordination in NGO-led aid operations. We also have with us Mr. Hafiz Amirul, Deputy Executive Director, Mercy Malaysia, who's also our long-term partner in disaster preparedness and also in our humanitarian mobilization. So Sheikh Hafiz hopefully will share some of our ground stories there. Ms. Hui Yung, whom I traveled to Azerbaijan for COP29 on the same plane. We flew economy, by the way, so that to reduce the footprint, our global footprint. So I was glad that when I decided to fly economy, I thought I was going to be the only one at the back at the cattle class. But I met so many friends, like-minded friends who shared the same vision that we all can collectively reduce our global carbon footprint. So just grateful that we bonded, although we were like quite jet lagged and so tired when we arrived in Azerbaijan. But Ms. Hui Yung, Head of Climate Action Implementation, Southeast Asia C40 cities, hopefully can share some of the nature-based solutions and global experiences in preparing cities for flood and disaster response management. So we have also Ms. Wen Disia, co-founder Grimace Art Project, hopefully can share some of your experiences there. And thank you all for being with us here today. I think we'll be huddling given that it is storming outside, and I hope the conversation is stormier in the room. So with this session that sparks rich conversations and new connections, and most importantly, actionable strategies that can help strengthen disaster preparedness at the community level for a safer and more resilient Malaysia. Hopefully, it's not just talk. A lot of what we discuss today will be translated into action. Thank you so much, and may this be something that is worthwhile of all of our precious time. Thank you.
Thank you, Puan Siti Kamaria. Your words have set a meaningful tone for today's session. Building on that, we are pleased to welcome Encik Muhammad Faizal bin Abdul Hamid, Ketua Penolong Pengarah National Disaster Management Agency NADMA, for his presentation on the post-mortem of the Monsoon Timur Laut 2024-2025.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Bos Kamaria, Managing Director for Hasanah. You give me 15 to 20 minutes. Let's start the game. Slide. Next. During the storm, effective action, prompt decision, prompt execution. So that's point number one. Point number two, let's see what happened in 2024 and 2025, because monsoon season start from normally November or last year coming to March this year. So that's how the pattern of MPL normally. So slide please. Or click next. Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is the pattern of what had happened throughout the last monsoonal season. You can see normally we are expecting on average for the last 5 years pattern 3 to 7 episodes of flood. But the last MTL seasons we have faced more than 10 episodes of flood. So imagine the preparations of all agencies related to disaster during communications. And then this is type of flood. Perhaps you might remember only one type of flood. There are many type of floods. So I don't want to dive into it. This is numbers. So this is where you can take some actions. Normally, top three states that affected disasters, especially flood, is Kelantan, Terengganu, Pahang for the past 10 years. But the last monsoonal season, you can see Sarawak is out of nowhere emerging in the top three.
Yes.
Thank you, Yayasan Hasanah, leading GDRN to with Yayasan Malaysia, Yayasan Telekom Malaysia, that is dispatched for 1.3 million worth of assistance post-recovery. So if you are looking to where can I chip in, where can I participate, so you can focus in these top 3, top 5 kind of states. So some data for tabulation affected districts. Now PPS is Pusat Dinas Sementara, affected temporary shelters, numbers of families involved, household, numbers of victims involved. So if we compare this, this is some breakdown of it. Have some estimations of damage, but you can go into website of DOSM Malaysia, Department of Statistics Malaysia. They publish almost every year the impact of MTL, whereby they zoom in into categories of impact of damages, industry-based, property-based, and also automation industry. So you can have a very insightful data if you go and study that. But this is what I want to show. Your mind might be recalled that the worst disaster flood happened in 2014, as what mentioned by Positive before. But based on these numbers, for the past 10 years, 2014 is the most affected years, recording 541,000 victims. We're talking about numbers of victims. And the second most affected MTR, the last MTR, 2024, 2025, 274,000 victims. Bear in mind, this number of victims for the current MTR, for the past MTR, is the number of victims registered in temporary shelter. On average, we estimate about 40%, only 40% people registered themselves in the temporary shelter.
Yeah.
Why? Perhaps because they really need some protection. But I should guess also they need the 1,000 ringgit from NAHMA, Bantuan Rumah Eksan. So our precondition is that you have to go to temporary shelter and register. Not to stay, but to register. But the numbers of victims that go to temporary shelter is only 40%. 274,000. Let's say we break it down, okay, 15 minutes left, we break it down into Kelantan. Kelantan, almost 70,000 families do not go into temporary shelters and register. So what happened? 70,000 households times, let's say, each family member is comprised of 3 members, we're talking about 200 something over victims. Numbers is not recorded. I should say, in terms of my estimation, in terms of numbers of affected victims, 2014 and 2024 almost the same. But in terms of value or impact of damages, 2021 is Selangor. Last 2021 is the most highly affected. Then some area, okay. So sharing some Rakanama, also we have Rakanama, Mercy, even Hasanah also part of it, registered, and we share our coordination, how we mobilize our assistance. So this is a website whereby you can register. Who can register? Any registered NGO can register to become our members. We do not provide any grant, if that's the question, but we provide coordination, definitely, and share information. So you can register, and then you can share your movement. Why you must share your movement? Well, Janoriana, thank you. Okay, this is how we collect information. If you want to go to Kelantan, you are NGO from KL. Who do you meet? Who do you seek consultation? Who do you seek advice? We have structures in terms of management of disaster. The district officers is the pengurusi jawatan kuasa pengurusan bencana daerah. You should consult them first. But do you have the access? Then you should consult the Secretariat Angkatan Pertahanan Awam Malaysia, Secretariat of Disaster at the district level or the state level. If you don't have the access, Hasanah already faced this time when they want to deploy assistance to Sarawak. So Sarawak resists all this assistance from outside NGOs. So we need to come in line, and we fronting them, we ask to give ways to our NGOs. So you need to know the authority. Why authorities is sometimes, not all the time, why authorities resist to work together with NGO? You come to day one of disaster, You want to become Superman and hero, you bring 500 buckets of KFC to a temporary shelter that have 1,000 victims. If you were the hero, what will you say? Please go back. Don't make more disaster in this area. So you have to get the data first, work together with the agencies, then coordinate your movement. So you can also check with our partners, NGO that are already on the ground. So NGO have the lingos of NGO and you know what to do, you know what to check. NGO perhaps do not have the lingos of government officials, perhaps you're taking time to get into it. Alright? So sharing information, this is what we insist to them. Then, thank you, GDRN, GDRC, the Nilai Negara. You're also part of this, whereby we have mobilized about 19,000 volunteers to our 42 active NGO for the past MTL. These are the names of the active NGO. Okay, you have deployed, you have assisted throughout nationwide 1,350 tons of wood, amounting almost 75 millions of ringgit. That's not government money, that's your own pocket money. Thank you, thank you, and thank you. So, if you want to know who's the players at the state level, we share this information. So at the very least, you know coming November is the next MTL. What you can do? July, August, September, you check with your partners here. Look, can I do something with you? What you need from us? We have this, can we go together with you? Because they know. Like if I want to go to Yayasan Hasanah, how do I park my car? I'm definitely call people from Yayasan Hasanah. If not, I will park outside. The same thing, the same simple things. So these are the players that you can contact. How many minutes I have? Okay, alright. So share this information, use it. I'm not coming here to teach or educate, I just want to share. You want to use it, use it. If the government agency official on the ground resists you, you know what. So please work with them. Okay? These are some of the tools whereby you can use these tools to check what had happened. At least, normally people will go to Info Bencana JKM. What do you have in Info Bencana JKM? Okay, I want every one of you open your handphone and download these apps. MyIB JKM. MyIB JKM. Available in Google's and Android, iPhone and Android. MyIB JKM is the apps that registered the numbers, registered the details of the victims, affected victims. You can have early registrations, and during the disaster happen, be it flood or whatever, the DO will instruct temporary shelter will be open, and then JKM, Welfare Department, will have QR code at the temporary shelters, and you just scan the QR code and you apply for the one-time exit. Early registration. What else do you want? 1,000 ringgit. Only those who apply from this system are entitled to 1,000 ringgit based on the conditions and pre-qualifications. Okay, this is some of the tools. My recommendation for you, of course, NAFMA, Botol Bencana, and others is my IBC camp. But if you want to go to the detail, Jalan Guntur, laluan mana, then you go all this. So, we have 8,417 temporary shelters nationwide. Last MTL active temporary shelter is about 1,400 something. Just imagine 1,000 PPS. 1,000 PPS. Just imagine 273,000 victims just now. 273 victims. What is the cost for their meals per day? Temporary shelter will provide 3 times cost per day. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. 5 ringgit, 10, let's say 5 ringgit, 10 ringgit, 5 ringgit, 20 ringgit times 200,000 victims. How much? How much? 40 million? 400 million? 4 million. 4 million? That's the amount. One day. 4 million per day. From November until March, how many days they sit in temporary shelter? That is the amount that federal and state government share to provide them. It's not. This is on top of all other costs, operation costs, rescue mission, whatever, logistic. So just imagine. Normally, takkan ini je kerajaan buat. No, takkan ini je. Mil sahaja pun, kalau kali 10 hari 40 million. 1 bulan 30 hari. On average, how many months for disaster MTL? But we cover for 12 years. So that's why government cannot work alone. We have to have whole of government approach. We have to have whole of society approach. We need you, you need us. We need together. No agency can super claim they are self-proclaim they are the Superman of the agency that can solve every disaster problem. No, we need each other. Okay, then you can target. Out of so many states, perhaps target Kelantan, Terengganu, Pahang, or Sarawak. So you can target which districts, what areas of that districts. This is 5 years historical data. We notice that this 100 PPS is the most active PPS that open. The frequency of open is 2 times per year, more than 2 times per year, comprised of more than 1,000 victims. So what can you do in this temporary shelter? Before you go down there, talk first with the welfare department or the local NGO. We advise the NGO to assist together with Red Crescent Malaysia to become the registration counter. Okay, what do you have in mind, registration counter? People, victims come, fill the form. No. We use my IBGCAM. Data capture through that data system. You can focus this area, choose any area that you want to be involved. Okay? So from this, we tabulate the perimeters of the community area based on the postcode. You have the temporary shelter address, then you have the postcode area. Perhaps you want to have engagement, early warning, sharing knowledge with the nearby community. You have. We share with you. Up to you to choose. Perhaps you are NGO from Kelantan, you want to choose where? Kelantan lah hotspot, Kota Baru, Tumpat. Zoom in area. We call this localization. We want to empower the local community. We want to power the local NGO so that local NGO help the local community. And outside NGO, coordinate and cooperate with the local NGO to help local community. At the end of the day, we don't want to proclaim we are the Superman. We want to proclaim that whole Malaysia is actually with the victim, to help the victim, for the victims. The rest, I think I should skip it. Okay. This video is same as my IBJKM information data, whereby only those who apply through this data can is eligible for 1,000 ringgit. One family and not per head, per family. And per MTL is for if the flood happen, let's say from November until March, 15 times, you can only entitle for once of 1,000 ringgit. Outside MTL, 3 months, 1,000 ringgit. So on average, 1 year about 3,000. Okay, this is about temporary shelter. Okay, thank you GDRN. Thank you GRC, Hasanah, Assistant Commissioner. So this is part of Kuala Jenurena. I copy your slide. Thank you. This is a slide of mine. I just want to share that this is the amount that I've contributed so far. So give yourself clap. Thank you. So 2023, 12 million. 2024, 23 million. Almost double the amount. So focusing on recovery. So now the focus, perhaps individual base of GRC can choose areas of community engagement, sharing knowledge, sharing session, early warning, preparedness, whatever. So this more focus on the recovery part. I think I should skip it because this is yours. Okay. Thank you. That's what I can say. But members of GDRN, when you go back to your office, you can tell your boss, okay, look, why don't we choose one district areas? You make a program with them, with the local NGOs. So you want education, you share education. Like Mercy want to focus on how to educate the children in the temporary shelters. They talk to Nakma. So we try to give some ways to them with the welfare department. So you can choose. Or you have a vocational technical, let's say after 1 week of the disaster flood subside, then you can go to the affected area, then you open what they call it, a repair counter for below 100cc from motor vehicles. So come the NW motorbike, you do ask them to go to workshop. If Kapcha, you come here and sit with them. So many things that you can do. Alright? Okay. I think, thank you. Okay. That will be all because Kuala Jenurena is here. So I don't want to delve into GDRM slide. So NAMA also provide online training should you want to know about structures or mechanics of disasters in terms of government framework. So we give you some knowledge and you get the certification, but then we have a limited numbers of online session up to 100. So you have to deal with it first, arrange first, then we can give you the online session. Valid for 2 hours session, I guess. So this is We have recorded our engagement session. We have partnered with the infra of Kementerian Kemajuan Desa dan Budaya. We tackle the pemimpin Dua Bandar. We tackle also with infra, Kemas, Felda, Felkra. All these we engage all the targeted areas so that at least they know what's the early warning system, what is the awareness. So CBDRM, what is CBDRM? At least people know here what is their risk exposures, what is their capacities and resources, and what is their emergency plan when disaster happens. At least to the very least, you guys know where's your temporary shelter. Should anything bad happen, then you can go there by yourself. If I'm asking the question right now, how many of you know where's your temporary shelter if this, not this building, that building outside collapse? Where do you want to go? Of course lah, Hotel Meridian, those who are capable. But who are not, then temporary shelter is the best. But please, go to the temporary shelter as the victims, not as the paymaster. Because all the people who work together in temporary shelters have their own limitation also. Their houses also collapse. Their houses also being faced with a flood. But they have to work. So please have during disaster, for the first 48 hours, the tension is very high. So let it go. Let it be. Work together. I think that's it. So we share some CBRM from this Subang Jaya. They have this intelligent network whereby they analyze their drainage systems, and you can have online data. You can see real time with these systems what happened if they have this when they give you yellow warning, then you need to send your car to the parking area. So the operation team only go to the parking area and then send you to the temporary shelters. So that's how they do it for the city disaster management. So you can see they have identified where's the parking spot, where's the most affected areas, what is the route to go during flood, because they have bad experience back 2021. So this is what have been done. Okay, I think that should be it. Okay, some activities. We have some review with our partners together with Rakan Dama Academia, Rakan Dama Corporate. So thank you again. I think. All right, 1 minute. Thank you very much. That's all. All right. Now to approve the session or the absolute closing. Thank you. Bye.
Don't worry everyone, we'll have a Q&A session after the panel discussion. So please keep your questions first. Okay, thank you to Bapak Faisal for the insightful presentation and setting the stage for today's important conversation. Today, we are privileged to have a distinguished panel representing viewpoints with varied experiences in their respective fields. We will be spending the next hour in the panel discussion, after which we will have Q&A session. To our virtual audience, feel free to use the Q&A feature to ask any question that you may have. Without further ado, I would like to welcome our moderator for today, Rashid Muruga, Head of Community Development and Humanitarian Disaster Relief of Yayasan Hasanah, together with our panelists, Encik Muhammad Faisal bin Abdul Hamid, Mr. Hafiz Amirul, Deputy Executive Director, Mercy Malaysia, Ms. Free Yung, Head of Climate Action Implementation Southeast Asia, C4E Series, and Ms. Wendy Sia, Co-founder, Guardians Art Project, to continue with the panel discussion.
A very good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here despite the storm outside. It's a pleasure having everybody here. Thank you for joining us for this panel session titled Before the Storm, Disaster Preparedness in Communities. My name is Lakshrin, the Head of Community Development and Humanitarian Disaster Relief. As we have heard from Puan Siti and Encik Faisal, disasters in Malaysia are unfortunately becoming more frequent and also more severe. This year alone, we've seen floods in Kedah, Johor, Sabah, Sarawak, bringing loss to property, destruction of livelihoods, and also tragically loss of life. Too often, those who suffer the most are our most vulnerable communities. As Malaysians, we have always come together to support one another in times of crisis. We have seen the spirit time and time again. But we must now ask ourselves, how do we reduce the need for response in the first place? How do we prepare better, learn from past events, and build solutions that help communities become more resilient? I'm honored to have with us today a distinguished panel of experts to discuss where we stand on disaster preparedness in Malaysia, and more importantly, what practical steps we can take to strengthen resilience in both urban and rural communities. Allow me to introduce our panel. Joining us from the National Disaster Management Agency, NADMA, we have Sheikh Muhammad Faisal bin Abdul Hamid, who you just heard earlier, the Ketua Penolong Pengarah Kanan of NADMA's Community and Social Development Section. NADMA was established in 2014 following the catastrophic Kelantan floods, and since then, it has become Malaysia's lead agency for disaster risk management and coordination. Mr. Faisal brings deep insights from the front lines of national level crisis coordination and will be sharing with us his experience managing disaster preparedness on a national level, the community-based disaster risk management or CBDRM approach, and how we're building systemic resilience across the country. Thank you for being here. Representing C40 cities, we have Ms. Hui, who is the head of implementation, climate action implementation, Southeast Asia for UKAID's UCAP-CAI program, where he oversees climate action, mainstreaming, and implementation in Kuala Lumpur, Jakarta, and Quezon City. C40 is a global network of the world's leading cities working to confront the climate crisis, and Hui brings expertise in designing and implementing urban climate resilience strategies. Today, she offers us the urban lens of how disasters disproportionately impact urban communities and what we need to do to prepare our urban systems for the next climate shock. Representing Mercy Malaysia, who I'm sure most of us are familiar with, we have Mr. Hafiz Amirul, Deputy Executive Director and a long-time humanitarian practitioner with field experience both locally and internationally. Mercy is one of Malaysia's most respected humanitarian organizations, with a legacy of both emergency response and long-term community preparedness. Mr. Hafiz has been deeply involved in disaster risk reduction or DRR programs and is working with YH on a community-based preparedness project in Hulu Langat. He will speak on the critical role of civil society organizations in operationalizing DRR frameworks and addressing the real-world barriers communities face in becoming disaster ready. Our final panelist is Wendy Sia, co-founder of Gerimis Art Project, an initiative that works closely with orang asli communities on documenting indigenous knowledge across Peninsular Malaysia. Wendy brings a crucial perspective on how disasters affect indigenous communities and how we can leverage on the assets and strengths of these communities. Her work provides us with powerful insights into community-led resilience strategies that have existed for generations. Today, she helps us understand how local wisdom can complement formal disaster preparedness strategies and why this knowledge must be protected, respected, and integrated. Another round of applause for our panelists. So, okay, Faisal, if you can start us off, could you introduce NADMA and the role that CBDRM plays in disaster preparedness and how it's used?
Thank you. NADMA, you mentioned already, establishment was established 5th October 2015. We're taking over the part of disaster division from the MKN, National Security Council, and also part of the unit for some Banjing the ICU. So these two units combined and NADMA was formed. You know, really, 2014 was one of the most challenging years, the worst of so far is throughout 10 years. So we have to really coordinate, use all resources, federal, state level, district levels, NGOs, and all the players. So this is whereby we know that not a single agencies can handle this scale of disasters. That's why NADMA, the Prime Minister Department, we use our Prime Minister's name to give an order to agencies. That's why they call it Arahan MKM number 20. Okay, and National Security Order number 20, which has been replaced by Arahan NADMA number 1. This order is not signed by our Director General. This order was signed by the Prime Minister. So under the decree of Prime Ministers, we have the authority to use all the resources, be it at the state, districts, or federal. So that's number one. Number two, we have so far focusing on the operational sides. We have empower our operational agencies. You already know PDRM as the commander of PKTK on scene, incident command. You know the fire department, the deputy commander. All these people, all these more than 50 agencies have various functions and roles specifically written under the Arahan Ahmad Nombor 1. So all these agencies knows. If they don't know, they have this written document. If they don't know, the district officers have the authority to remind them, this is what you should do, and this is what you should give us. So we have established that. So that's why you can see that, of course, nothing is perfect in this world. So change of people, change of events, so it will become challenge. So that's why we need to have a continuous training session, simulation session, comprising all agencies. So we're focusing on the states that prone disasters. Normally Kelantan, Terengganu, Pahang is the best shot. And then now we are encroaching to other states because we learn a lot. Those who are frequently facing disaster are those who normally on average better prepared than the rest. Why we know that? Learn from Selangor. Everyone in shock, this scale of disasters, what to do, who's to do what, which agency pinpoint. They have the instruction under agency, but even agency also have some sort of challenge when they want to execute at this scale and level. And then after we empowering and we have some sort of coordination with our agencies, now we are focusing the post disasters and committees. We know whatever it is, before disaster happened, the office, the assets of the operation agencies can mobilize within half an hour, 1 hour to the site. But during disaster, sometimes it takes half days before the boat can happen. But the saddest part is that people waiting for the government assets to be deployed for them to save the livelihoods of the community. But those who fishermen village, do they need to wait for the boat from PDRM to save themselves? So this is the part where it looks. Community also have assets. Community also have responsibility. You have to be responsible of yourself. That's why when we flew aircraft or what, the first instruction said that during the shock of air, whatever, the breathing apparatus will go down, and you have to do what first? Save yourself first before you save the others. That's the instruction. So now we know we have to focus also on the community. That's why the CDRL community-based disaster management become the main agenda of national level. Previously, many players have. Mercy also have their CDRL programs, Nadim, GEC, all these players have introduced some sort of CDRL. We focus on basic CDRM so that each community level can do on their own. What is CDRM? Normally, it's three main pillars. As I mentioned before, you have to know your risk. You stay in Batu Rakit, Terengganu. You don't know your land erosions or beach erosion. Then you don't know what your risk. At least that's information you should know. Where's your temporary shelters? What road is normally safe during disaster? So this information that you have to have first. You know your risk. Pepatah Melayu berkata, kalau takut dilambung ombak, jangan berumah tepi pantai. Dah berumah tepi pantai, carilah jalan selamat. So it means this is part of the thing. So community have to be aware of themselves. So you have to know your risk, you have to know your resources. Then government works together with the communities. Let's say for the fishermen village, we provide them we give them education to the district office so that they can provide some diesel for the boat. Because the fisherman boat is for them to find their own income, not to rescue teams. So they need to have some token. So we work together. The Hasanah Commission work together with NGO. We provide, and also the Hasanah, we provide some simulation with the agencies and NGO through our Rakan Amal emergency exercise, simulation exercise. So we have carried out these things so far. So our focus from last 3 years until future is actually community-based disaster reduction management, whereby the community know their exposure, they know their assets and resources, and they have their emergency plan. The emergency plan part is the most important. That's why normally we have fire drill 2 times per year. I don't know how many times that's what mandated under the fire department. I don't know if this building have get out 2 times or not. Okay. Alright. So whether or not they are prepared for it. So even fire drill also, where we have 2 times per year exercise, people get forgotten. So we have to remind them and play night. So reminder, engagement is the thing that we cannot stop. Thank you.
Ms. Hui, could you kindly introduce C40 and what their role is in managing disaster vulnerabilities for urban populations?
Sure. So thanks very much for the opportunity, and I think very enlightening to hear from Encik Faizal, which is the National Disaster Management Agency. So C40 cities work with 97 cities around the world on accelerating climate actions. That means looking at mitigation, decarbonization, but also increasingly, like what our colleagues have mentioned, on adaptation. Because cities are where the population is very much located, and at the same time, also a lot of the climate impacts are actually happening through things like flooding and increasingly heat. So what we do is we work with all the cities that you can see up here. Maybe you can skip forward a couple of slides. Through one more. So we work with our cities through different networks as well as programs, because these member cities with us, they actually have to take action. So cannot just bayar duit, become a member, and then that's it. They need to report on their carbon footprint. They also need to have a climate action plan that is anchored on science-based targets. So we understand each of the cities have different challenges in different areas. So what we do is we actually link them up with their member cities so that they can learn from each other. So I've got a highlight there on the little box on adaptation, and you can see it ranges from cooling, flooding, as well as looking at water security. But honestly, this is just a subset of the things that we do by working with our cities. We empower them on things like technical assistance. So for example, we are currently undergoing a particular program in Quezon City in Philippines on tackling heat. I was just there in April and it was 40 degrees. So Malaysians, kita kan suka complain dengan 35 sangat panas . You go to Quezon City in Manila and that's their summer, and 40 degrees actually in fact is normal. And you can imagine the amount of people in terms of informality working outside, what that impact is on them. So what we do is we work with cities by looking at what their challenges are to give them the technical assistance as well as teaching them how to be inclusive. The next slide will show you the 3 pillars that we adhere to, which is making sure that cities serving their rakyat is not just looking at stakeholder engagement. I think all of the people over here will know of course we do stakeholder engagement, everybody come, makan-makan, they do a workshop, they go off, it's done. But if you really want to be truly inclusive in the climate action that you're implementing, you need to make sure that the actual process of selecting the stakeholders is inclusive, you're not excluding anyone. How are you actually involving them throughout the design as well as the implementation? And last but not least, looking at the equitable impacts. Are we really truly making sure that the benefit sampai to the people that needs to have it? So those are some of the things that we work with our cities on, equipping them and hopefully allowing them to be more prepared when it comes to disaster response.
Thank you. 40 degrees is crazy. I've been seeing in the news that Europe has 46 degrees Celsius now in Central Europe, right? And I see the thermometer on my car every day, 36. I'm like, wow, this is really bad, right? But wow. Encik Hafiz, so I mentioned that YH is very proud to partner with Mercy on a project in Hulu Langat, right? Could you share more about Mercy's work there and also what you're hoping to achieve from that project?
Thank you. Mercy has been around for 26 years. And we have advanced from becoming a purely emergency response organization, and we are diversified into doing other things like disaster risk reduction, promoting equitable and sustainable developmental works, which include healthcare, recovery and development, all sorts of things. And usually, if it's possible, we will always be with a community that we serve for a longer period of time. Usually. Why usually? Because of course, as a non-profit, we have this challenge of funding. So thank you to Yes and Hasanah. And even way before that, when Tan Sri Dr. Jamila founded Mercy Malaysia, we were proud to say that Khazanah, Tan Sri Azman Mohta, has kindly agreed for a very important thing called organizational development assistance or grant, or which Kazana put a couple of million ringgit for a period of 6 years to develop Mercy Malaysia. If not because of that, we are not where we are, and yes, and Hasanah is continuing that thing, that spirit, which allow Mercy Malaysia to deliver our services beyond the emergency response period. And this is very important because, I mean, we do not want to sit for too long, because if not, it will create an unnecessary dependency on it. But too short is also very bad, because you can't just jump out your kids into sungai kan, mati lah budak tu. Sama lah kan, dia konsep sama lah. Yeah. You need to let go of it. So this is what we do. So that happened in 2021, end of 2021, 2022, that's the peak of the emergency. But we realized that these people, this community, or the communities, because there's a lot of communities, I think you touched a bit on orang asing over there, are a very sophisticated group of people which require further assistance, not necessarily aid, but assistance just to make sure they're more resilient. Resilient in terms of what? They are very specific. Some livelihood, some climate, preparing against the next disaster, some social integration. So because of that complexity, so we came out with this concept called Resilient Living Lab, which later on doesn't be too long. I can explain that later. Which yes, and Hasanah has kindly supported us. And it's not easy, because Yayasan Hasanah is the third or fourth funder that we approach, and the only one that agreed to that idea. Yeah, so that's the reason on that, because that reflects the thinking and the mindset of our society when it comes to preparedness. Yeah, but I'll deep dive on that later. Panjang sangat cerita. Thank you.
Wendy, so I was really surprised to speak to Matt and then realize that Gurimis is partnering with them on this TEK booklet, right? Typically, when I see Gurimis, you're at events, you're at marketplaces, doing very art-related things with indigenous communities. So if you could share about how Gurimis got involved with disaster preparedness, and also on what is TEK, traditional ecological knowledge, and how have you seen it applied effectively in disaster preparedness?
Okay, thank you. So we usually do work in the arts and culture sector, but we document the indigenous knowledge. So we work with our partners and collaborators in the villages. And of course, the knowledge is derived from living in the environment for an extended period of time. So therefore, when we work in disaster management, it's because the knowledge was the first tool that the indigenous community used in responding for initial response before any sort of aid reached them. But in a report that we did, we spent the whole of last year working with 2 communities. It was funded by GF SGP, which is Global Environmental Facility Small Grants Program. And we didn't use TEK as the term of indigenous knowledge, because when we use traditional ecological knowledge, the word traditional makes it seem very static, means it's not evolving. But the fact is, the Orang Asli have always adapted and evolved their knowledge based on the changing environment as well. So the term that we use is indigenous knowledge systems and protocols, which is in short is ISP, because it shows like not only they turn to the indigenous knowledge, but also what are the indigenous systems that have been in place in the community for over generations, what sort of protocols that they use in response and in working amongst themselves as a community. But to see how ISP is used, actually I need to open the map, but I think we can pull out the
slide.
Yeah, the slide. Okay. okay, stop. Go back. One more. Okay, this one. So we work with Kampung Orang Asli Paya Lebar, and then upstream, and then downstream is three villages, but Bukit Tadung, Putus Tua, and Paya Rumput. So we looked at Sungai Langat, and when we work with both village, they always say this one sentence, which is Sungai itu satu satuan, which means that Sungai Langat is only one river, but because they are in different geographic locations, so experiences differ from upstream to downstream. So flood type differs, whether landslide, whether they experience landslide, whether they what sort of levels of accessibility that they face as well. So if we turn to next map, like okay, we're going to stop here. So at Sungai Dui, which is Kampung Orang Asli Paya Lebar, we first need to understand where they are geographically. So based on where they are geographically, the historical use of the land, and then their community structure, all these are part of the indigenous knowledge. So when the flood happened in 2021, if you move to the next slide, and we can see that location-wise, the only exit is across the Lui River, right? You see it's a bridge there. And the PPS was 5 to 10 km away. So when the flood came, it was too sudden, they could not exit their village. So the first thing that they did as a community was to fall back on, basic gotong royong, who are the village leadership within the kampong, and how they help each other, because it was 8 p.m. There was no electricity, everything was cut off, no mobile lines. So they fall back. The village leadership, they let themselves in the dark. They know where was the highest point in the village because they have lived there for a very long time. So they know where was the highest point, and therefore they went to which is the library that Budimas built, and it was the only building tall enough to house all of the 300 villages. But if we go to the next slide, this is just a summary of some of our findings on how they use their indigenous knowledge in the initial response. Of course, they have their own early warning systems, which include rain types, observation of the river, and color of the water. And then, as I explained, how they help each other in the dark to lead themselves to the highest point in the village. And this particular village, they don't have ILMU doesn't they don't have pipe system, so they use gravity fed water system. So when the flood came, it destroyed all of their, the gravity fed system, right? And because they knew where it was, they knew where the landslide hit, and they know which streams are clean enough to get water quick enough at that point. So because they know their land that well for them to have that sort of fast response in the village. And then after the flood, they actually went to fix their communal gravity-fed water system first. Then it was only after 20 days, I think, that we had, I think it was like the Kedah MB that came with the pipe and everything. So after that, they managed to fix it, blah, blah, and then after the flood, if we go back to the previous slide, after the flood, based on the knowledge of their land as well, they have some recommendations where to dig the parade. So for example, like GPS deepened the river after the flood, it was only to where the border is in the village. After that, upstream, they didn't dig anymore because it was not part of the gazetted village. So these are some of the findings that we have. So this village, the flood type was mud and debris. It didn't, it wasn't banjir, bergenang. But if we look at downstream at Bukit Tadung, the next slide. Okay, stop. So this is where, so Bukit Tadung is near KIA. You can see the amount of development that surrounds them. So therefore also the type of flood that they face is very different from their upstream relatives. So next slide. Next slide again. So banjir bergenang. So what happened is that a long time ago, Bukit Tadung was the highest point
in the area. It was a peat swamp area, so naturally it floods, but the peat swamp would, it's like a sponge, right? But now it's mostly all and Bukit Tadung, it used to be a hill, but it was mined. But now where the village is, you can see, where is the village? In just that small pink color box, right? It is now the lowest point because of the rise, the development surrounds them, so everything rises. So what happens is like when the flood comes down from upstream, and then the Straits of Malacca was very high, so then there was a pushback from the sea and from upstream. So that's where it began for 2 weeks straight. So this is the experience that the one of the Bukit Tadung experience, but they also lean on their indigenous knowledge. The next slide. Yeah, of course, similarly, they have also early warning systems, and they actually receive WhatsApp from the upstream relatives saying like, hey, it's flooding where we are now, it's going to hit you soon. So because it's only one river, they know that, right? If it floods in Kajang, then definitely Kuala Lumpur is going to flood. Yeah, and of course, they also have their own village patrol, they have their own GPS officer, one of the villagers work for GPS, and these are the sort of info that they share amongst themselves. But also because there is a PPS nearby, but it was very crowded, so the villagers decided to move on top of Bukit Tadung. It's already it's not really a bukit anymore. If you go to the resort, you can see how it looks like, right? But they know that it's the tallest point, and no matter how high the water goes, they will be safe. So they knew where to get clean water, they knew how to cook, they knew how to build their own pondok. So these are all knowledge systems that they already have. And then after that, when it comes to cleaning, they help each other. And also, if go back to previous slide. So after the flood, some of the recommendations that the village leadership suggested is to some of the screw pump suggestion in the area where they'll be able to pump out the water fast enough so the bungee won't be down there for 2 whole weeks. Yeah, but it's already existing screw pump, but it's on the other side, and then there's one more in the screw pump next, but it's not fast enough to pump the water out. Yeah, and Banjir Bagenang, one of the most worrying thing is, of course, there's a lot of trash from upstream, and also dengue and diseases, and the mud smell would stay for some time, especially when it gets hot. So these are some examples. Very long maps. Thank you.
No, thank you, Wendy. Also to share, Wendy, Gurimis and Madge have a book on traditional ecological knowledge and how it can be used for disaster preparedness coming up soon, so do keep your eyes out for that. Shifting gears a bit from successful models, Hafiz, if you can share with us, what are the biggest challenges faced in improving community preparedness?
Itulah cerita tadi tu. So ulangan 2021, 2022 early, when most of us have been doing emergency response, but very few you can see a sudden drop of number of people continuing with assistance. All type of assistance, whether it's livelihood, whether it's emergency, recovery, rebuilding. Why? Simple. Tak ada energy lah, no momentum, tak ada duit lah sebenarnya. That's simple. Okay, but because fortunately, because alhamdulillah, people trust in that, people do give us a bit more money, and we have this network of volunteers who are willing to do a bit more. A bit more tu tak ada dah sampai 2-3 tahun. Maybe for the entire of 2021 we were there. And then came 2022, no more money, no more money, like it's when duit dia insure dia. But the needs are always there, because the longer we stay, we get very close with the community and we start to understand. So we start to come out with ideas and program design and approaching various donors now. But not many understand or get the idea of post-disaster recovery. Early recovery, fine. Recovery, one more development. So we approached a couple of donors. It wasn't successful until we met Hasanah. Maybe because we work closely with Hasanah and you understand. You see, in disaster risk management, there's this 3 basic principles. Maybe not many are familiar with this. Number one, it's what is known as prospective disaster risk management. So we are preparing. So your CBDRM is more prospective. And then there's corrective DRM, meaning that things has happened, you do corrective. And the third one, when there are residual risks, which you cannot do through the prospective or corrective, dia ada yang dipanggil you compensate lah, compensatory DRM. So combining all these three is what we propose in this resilient living lab. Of course, people dengar ni tak faham lah apa benda kau nak buat ni mesti kan. So that is the problem. That is the issue. That is the challenge. So, but that challenge is also us. We are also taking the blame because throughout our 25 years of experience, we never compile and share those experience and knowledge properly to the society, to the government, to the NGOs, to partners. So kita pun salah juga lah. Now that we have the support, the resources, we hope this project will set a new milestone for what humanitarian and development work could be or should be. The other challenge, this is not Mercy Malaysia's challenge, it's not our unique challenge now. It is my worry to see the normalizing of risk. Contoh tadi Cik Fazal sebut kalau takut apa tadi? Rumah kalau takut banjir
Nama ombak dengan ombak.
itu dia. Betul. Lah ni kita duduk tengok this community duduk dekat air. Of course they encroach water kan. So all these NGOs, these architects, engineers, scientists, innovators yang konon-konon ni came up with all these ideas of floating house. It sounds innovative but it is actually, we are normalizing risk. Because it's easy to make the house float, but it's difficult to create awareness, make proper land use reform, and relocate the people. Itu susah kan? Kita buat senang je lah. That's the problem. So that is the other challenge that I foresee will happen in the future.
Thank you. Ms. Wei, I saw you nodding a lot. Do you face the same challenges in cities building resilience as well?
I think the challenges are always multifold in the sense that, awareness and knowledge is definitely one. It just really resonated with me the bit about the floating houses because we like to use technology as the panacea of everything, right? So I'm sure some of you have heard terms like geoengineering. Spray sulfur into the atmosphere, will deflect that, we're all well and good, we don't need to reduce our footprint, right? But what we have lost is really like this indigenous knowledge and the ability to look at land and also our environment and how do we sort of like harmonize with that. So some of the work that we work with cities is really looking at, of course, sustainable urban planning. This means very, very simple things like please don't build on floodplains. Common sense, tapi not so easy lah when you have developers coming to lobby, yeah? Let's just be honest, right? I mean, and this is happening everywhere in the world. So there are a few challenges when it comes to looking at resilience. I don't know if they can skip to the slides. Yeah, probably one up. One more? One more. One more. So, being in a city setting, we all are living in cities, right? So, I know in rural areas, mungkin susah lah nak reach all the different, for example, orang asli, mungkin tak ada technology or like spread it out everywhere. In cities, by right, it's much easier because it's dense, right? We're all padat-padat. It's very easy for us to get information across to each other. But actually, that's directly linked to what I've just mentioned. It poses a direct challenge with the use of space, right? So it's not so easy now when you are fighting against development, right? Which is required, of course. However, this could actually be a real challenge when it comes to prioritization. We also like to think about building resilience as building infrastructure lah, turbine lah, widen our drains lah, etc. But we can have all the physical infrastructure in the world, but if it's not used correctly, it's still going to be an issue. So I did a River of Life project long time ago when we were still doing NTP, right? And DBKL actually worked with us on that. A lot of the times when we went down to look at the public outreach program, Hulu Langan and all that, upstream all the way coming down, beautification, A lot of the people go like, itu sungai ke? Ingat tu longkang. But it's true, right? If you think about it, because it's actually a concrete tebing, right? How come, in your mind, does not look like a river, right? So you can build all the tebings in the world, but if we continue to throw trash, rubbish into the waterways, that's why we have drainage issues, right? So you can have the infrastructure, but how do we use that infrastructure is really key. And that's something that cities face all the time. So selalu kata lah, banjir kilat, kita punya longkang lah. But actually is what are we doing with the drainage, right? But also to Encik Faizal's point, kita punya longkang tu pun 20 tahun dulu. Our development is unchecked. Of course, it's not going to be able to have the same carrying capacity. Information, of course, is the other thing, right? So we know that when it's a disaster, it's key to reach the people very quickly, right? But also, how many people can you reach? So again, we're speaking from a place of privilege where we are today in this room. Everybody has a smartphone. But what about people that actually do not have access to technology? Macam mana you nak get the message to diorang? Tak ada app, tak ada WhatsApp, for example, right? So we really need to think about sometimes the solution that we're using, high versus low tech is crucial. So for example, in DBKL, they have a very simple early warning system, right? They use SMS. So you don't have to have a smartphone, you don't have to have an app. The SMS is free because they actually work with the providers. It gets the information out to people, whether you are a rakyat Malaysia or whether you are a migrant. So that is one way for them to actually look at that. So I think the deployment of tech, we really need to be practical about it. The last two is to Encik Hafiz punya point lah, money lah, resources, right? Not now. So you get the money from federal budgets and state budgets, but most of the time we don't have the right information, right? So what is the data on where are the hotspots, for example? What do we do with that information? So actually, I learned a lot from your presentation. For example, I will have no idea where my temporary shelter is. Evacuation tak tahu macam mana kan. So I mean, this is again people like us that have access to information, we are literate. But imagine people that have no way of accessing that information, and also the power dynamics between social groups are very key. But last one is I think something that we don't talk about. So, right, to your point, Encik Hafiz, actually the Resilience Living Lab is so crucial, and I can understand why the first few donors didn't understand. Because they're like, you got the response phone, why you want money? That too, right? So our conflict to improve that. But the point being with disaster response is we don't think about the prevention because it hasn't happened yet, man. So why do you need the money for something that hasn't happened? But if you go to the insurance company, and in fact we're working with Zurich Foundation on the Urban Climate Resilience Program, they are very, very aware of this. The money that I save from avoiding the disaster to happen to begin with is worthwhile. Because the money that you need to put into the response, like Natma and all that, banyak tau. Just makan ni, 40 million, right, for 10 days. So I think that's something that us as policymakers and practitioners, we need to learn how to actually quantify the cost of disaster avoidance to make the case. And that I think will definitely help us in terms of preparedness.
Thank you. Encik Faizal, we talk about money, the problem of getting money, and the value of preparedness. But do we actually have any data that tells us, okay, for every ringgit you spend on preparedness, this is how much you save or how much of damage you avoid? Basically, what is the ROI, if we look at preparedness and value of it?
Yeah, one report from United Nations DRR. For every $1 you invest in avoidance or mitigation, whatever investment, you're going to save about $15 in terms of damages and costs related to the disaster. So talking about this investment, when you're talking to agencies or fund holders, we're going to give you some fund. They need to see proof. How are you going to prove to them? I think all these panelists have some challenges in terms of proving to them something that had not happened yet, and based on historical data. So we have passed our era where we know that disaster you cannot work alone. That's why NAMA published the data, even though we have some critics from other agencies also. How come you disclose the data? So people who know these areas of disaster, then the developer will not go in, and the developer will go against us, tempat ni letak hotspot dah. So all this kind of thing, when we share this information, it's not, even Hawaii and the US also have their own housing development nearby the volcano. They will also have their previous historical of eruptions. So when we share the data, we want the public to be ready. We want the public to have tools. And most important part is, we don't want the public to solely blame the government. So the blaming part has to come together. Blame and responsibility has to work together. So we know we have the authority. We share the public information. You go to portable channel, you can get all the information. You go to my IBJK, you get the information of the information. Even though if you go now under info bencana JKR, you can have real data. What is the where is the temperature active right now, and the breakdown of these victims and what. So we have spent the data. We have spent our investment previously in operations, rescue. Then we spend our money in terms of sharing data. Then we spend our money in community empowerment. So you might not have seen it, but we have invested in actually 3 main important documents. Number 1 is actually Arahan Nama 1, Directive Orders of Nama number 1, whereby this written document is the instructions to all related agencies for cooperation. Then we publish Garis Panduan Pelaksanaan C9M di Malaysia, so that all agencies in universities and whatnot have some reference materials on how to carry their C9M programs. And number 3, we publish National Document Policy, DRF 2030 under NAHMA. So where we go after this? Way forward. Now we are actually, number 1, we are trying to share information and to attract donors, especially Hasanah and all the GDRM members, so that they can look into the education, awareness, mitigation part, and empowerment of the local NGO. Local NGO have no option. They have to remain there with the community, affected community. So outside NGOs will have all the technical skills, knowledge, come there, impart them with knowledge, and they have to be there, sustain that, so that they can continue to face their affected areas. So that's number 1. So number 2, we also are trying to work together with this consortium of Rakan Amal Academia of research-based universities that have a disaster research center. We know that people from, if you have university, we know that people from academic side, they really like to do some research, but their research is for academic purpose. We want this research to be applied knowledge. What is applied knowledge? So inter of faculty within the same universities, they have different disaster topics talking about different things that can be something that can be executed. For example, I don't want to talk about how you do it. I just want, do you have the technologies, current technologies in small scale first, that can say, Cik Faizal, Nakma can have this, look, when flood happened at 10 a.m., within 4 hours, you can have a list of generated affected address, home, and how much the damage of waters have impacted each home. Verified by our satellite radar and drone, whatever. So they don't have the applied knowledge base. They really solely focus on the research and education academic base. So now we have to work together with them. Look, you can do within your faculties, within university, or you can collaborate with the other universities also. They have similar topic research in technologies that you can forward to us. Other areas of expertise that they can share, like you have faculties of engineering and construction, whatever development, you can introduce, let's say, disaster-prone material of constructions. You are Hasanah development. So, and then you can also propose to us, let's say within, we can develop instant houses within 2 days that can long last until 5 years for the temperature. So this is the type of applied knowledge that you look into it. Not you have technology, we don't have time to listen to that, because we have to prove it to our paymaster, especially MOF. Look, you have to have it, you have to have it now, and you have to pay it now. If you talk about academic, you can talk after 3 years of research, blah, 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 then disaster dynamic will change. Thank you.
Thank you, Faisal. When you're talking about a way forward, and I'm asking this especially for our partners working with indigenous communities, how do we untap that potential and that traditional ecological knowledge from communities, and how do we use that in our disaster preparedness strategies?
Okay. I think similarly, like Cik Faisal was explaining earlier, whenever NGO wants to send aid to anywhere, to ask for the specific numbers first before they send in aid. The same thing is to actually work closely with the community leaders and also their people to understand their specific needs, to understand what sort of knowledge that they already have that you can use to strengthen and also to enhance disaster responses. Because I just want to add to what all of you said just now, especially something that you cannot predict what happens, right? You can't show the data for something that hasn't happened yet. Through our research, we actually learned that something that happened 50 to 70 years ago, we can only feel the effects now. So like at Hulu Langa, why there was landslide when it rained so much, it was because like 50, 70 years ago, there was logging in the upstream forest. So that was what happened when you remove trees, the roots are weak, there's no root system, and then when it rained, in the heavy rain in 2021, that's when the flood happened. So that was 70, 50 years ago, and it was only felt in 2021. So then that's why when we want to work with the communities as well, is also to work closely to understand that when something happens, it's not in just one specific area. You have to look beyond that. You can build something. Hulu Langa is at the border of Negeri Sembilan, and something that is done in Negeri Sembilan side, it can also have a downstream or ripple effect with the communities there. So to really just sit with them, to witness with them, to listen to them, and so and then you can so that they can also have ownership of the sort of responses that they can do based on what they know, and then they can also implement it better, from the bottom up. Yeah.
Thank you. So we're actually running out of time. I've got a final question for the panelists just to wrap up. What do you hope to see change when it comes to how we prepare for disasters, or any other final thoughts that you have? Perhaps, Ms. Hui, you can start with you.
I think that's a really tough one. When it comes to disaster preparedness, it's not just about us anymore. I think all of us are actually involved, right? As rakyats, as policymakers, as practitioners, as people that are actually conducting good work on the ground. So being able to sort of, I think, gather information to make sure that everyone can actually make the case is really key. And that's not just your hard facts data, like things like the cost avoidance, etc., but also the indigenous knowledge from your communities as well. Ask them what actually works so that we are not just sia-sia duit lah kan kita buat ni lepas tu sebenarnya tak jalan pun. I think that engagement is really key, and that means that we really need to engage our communities inclusively. Right? So it cannot just be, I just ask this particular bunch of people that will give me the answer that I want, and then I got really like that I jalan. So I think that's really, really important to make sure that the people that we engage are indeed inclusive.
Thank you. Perhaps Ms. Hafiz?
Talking about the future, I think everybody in this room kita ni habis obsolete lah.
Right off, huh?
Habis. The future, those paling tua pun yang darjah 6 sekolah sekarang, itu paling tua tu. That's the future. So in other words, I really would love to see that everything that we discussed is implemented, embedded, and integrated in our education system, formal education system. That's the only way to do it. Kerajaan dah buat kerja, bukan kerajaan dah buat kerja, yayasan dah buat kerja. Everyone talk about good or bad lah, different quality kan. Researchers dah buat kerja, but the education system is embedded in the education system. Nak tak nak, there's no discount. We have to do it. So that should be the future. Sorry lah, kita dah lepas sekolah dah tak kerja kan, so tak pandai sangat. Dah budak kecil.
I think I would say better policies because like for example the case of Bukit Tadung with development policies, we can have a lot of policies saying like, okay, if the developer wants to build this bit, then they must have this sort of drainage system. Sometimes they try shortcuts to avoid that, and then the impact will be felt by the communities that are living around. Not only the orang asli, but also the Malay communities that are surrounding that area. They would feel the impact. So I would say better policies. We need to relook at that, and also to give more self-determination to the orang asli in deciding what sort of futures they want as well, not only what the city dwellers want. So yeah, that's my answer.
Thank you. Kevin?
Kalau dia sebut ayat ni klise sangat kot. Jangan ditanya apa negara sumbang kepada kamu, tanya apa yang kamu sumbang kepada negara. The point is that whatever we talk, we are not the victims. Normally we are not the victims. So if you are in the place of that victim's part, what is your preparedness to do? So we're talking about the community at all levels. NGOs also communities, government officials also communities, we are all communities. So what can we do on our own to make a better future in our places? That's number one. Number two, government has to work together, and NGO also has to work together. That's why we're sharing that. So okay, NGO A do this, NGO B do this. So we are not replicating, we are completing each other. So whatever it is, we have to work together. My mantra is for whole of government, whole of society approach. We can bring government all the way around, no other matter, the politician, whatnot. But at the end of the day, you are the victims, you are the front line of defense. What can we do to save yourself? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, panelists. So now we've got Q&A. Does anybody have any questions for our panelists? Just raise your hand up and we'll pass you a mic. Yes, at the back. Yeah, you need my
Sing on?
Yes.
Albert T. from Toronto. My question is, all these case studies I've seen were primarily about the blue lung floods. Always see that there was this heat wave between May and June. So what sort of measures can be done for heat waves of the sort if we expect them to get worse over the years to come, especially among those who may not be living in areas or have sort of income needed to upgrade their housing with better air conditioning systems.
Thank you. Is that aimed at any panelists in particular?
That's an excellent question. Thank you so much for that. So I wanted to sort of elaborate on a local example that's closer to home, and then one that's also an international example. So heat waves are definitely getting worse. You heard just now, I was in QC last year and this year, same time, April, 40 degrees. And then as a Malaysian, I'm going there complaining, right? Then realize that actually it's really bad. So over in KL, we work with PPR Beringin under the Urban Climate Resilience Program, which is very thankfully supported by the Z Zurich Foundation. So we actually work with the PPR communities to find solutions that work for them. And recently they just did one of the community building events on how do they actually look at responding if there's a heat wave. And it's very cute. It's actually called Dingin di Beringin. Yeah, so I'm very happy to share more information about that on the program as well as what we did. So to give you an idea, one of the things that they realized is it's great that you have your community leaders. Memang lah, we cannot do our work without them. However, how do you engage the other PPI residents, which again, to your point, socio-economically, you don't really have the luxury of looking at, again, technology to help you solve the problem. So they actually had a bunch of activities to engage the communities, including kids and older grandparents, bawa cucu, jalan-jalan and all that. So they actually got them to draw. What do you think would help? For example, if you actually need to find a place on a very, very hot day, right? They also have a urban garden, planting vegetables, etc., which doubles as a place that they can go for tempat teduh. Because over there, obviously, the temperature will be a lot lower. So those are some of the very local examples. But over in places like, for example, Portland in the US, which at the moment, unfortunately, climate action is really being threatened by the federal level. I think a lot of you will know. The cities are actually working with households to make sure that they have energy efficient cooling systems to go into their house. So they will literally get these units, and you can come and you can register. It doesn't matter whether you are rich, you are poor, etc. You just need to be a citizen. You can actually come and access those machines to bring it back home. And it's actually funded by a revolving fund that the city runs. So this is also to the point of money, right? Because it's not a bottomless pit that we can get our donor partners to actually work on. So the city is actually acknowledged the fact that it's very important, and they've actually looked into a revolving fund in order for them to fund these cooling energy efficiency cooling units as well. So hope that gives you some inspiration.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Yes, the message.
Hi, my name is Alia, and I'm from the Selangor Climate Adaptation Center. And I have a question in terms of what seems to be the challenge when you get the buy-ins from people. I mean, you can set up all this like urban infrastructure, to either deal with like floods or heat wave. But then again, you also kind of need that buy-in from communities to make sure that, it's either being maintained or that they're also fully supporting and engaging with these solutions as well. So is there like any particular challenge that you see in engaging with these communities? And this question is for all panelists.
When talking about policy, policy makers down the road, they have this dilemma whether to have more programs and projects that can bring more income to the stakeholder, or having other programs that will hinder the challenges. So when you are actually talking to the policy makers, you have to show that all your initiatives actually can tackle this issue. It's not 0-1 game, 0-sum game. It's actually win-win game. So you have to show by doing this, you can secure your energy, you can reduce your costs, you can ensure that disaster-prone areas is being taken care of, and at the same time, you can generate more income for them. So incomes versus disaster is actually, that's why we call disaster is actually a complex problem that can be manageable but will not be solved at all. So manage it. For example, as the federal government, we can simply say that all loggings are forbidden under this new policy. But what can we change? How can we tackle for this loss of income from logging? So you have to tackle this issue diplomatically and technically. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay, we got one on PBT. So, being very honest, actually, I think the PBTs are the ones that's asking for help. And the reason why I say that is because they are the front line when disaster happens. It is part of their responsibility. So it's not just NATMA, for example. But I mean, like, look, if Subang starts, I'm going to go look for MBSG, I'm not going to look for NATMA, right? So to be very honest, I think they actually do want that help. But you're right, I think in terms of that balance of development versus the protection of that, right? So I think that's where when we actually give them the tools of identifying, if you don't do this, this is a cost towards development, I think that helps. So bottom line still matters, because not everybody is DBK has an amazing amount of money, but then, a lot of the PBTs have a fraction of that. but a lot of them are actually very keen on protecting how they can continue to do business continuities.
Thank you. I think Karen had a question.
Hi, my name is Garrett. I got questions for Mr. Faisal. So maybe I just want to know more of the government plans in preparing migrants and the refugee pre-disaster, during the disaster, and after the disaster. So I think there is always a fear on the ground that when trying to go to PPM, and somehow someday we know that they get rejected on the ground level. What the politics is that we must help people, right? But maybe to elaborate more. So I think, hold on. So for the second question to Ms. Shui, it's about, do you find it challenging to include migration aspect in the urban plan, where you sell it over or you try to get a buy-in from PBD, from stakeholders, funders, and the ground? Thank you.
How to answer this diplomatically without international relationships between senders and receiving countries. Okay, number one, I can ask the same question. As the embassies of other states in Malaysia, what do they do for their people and citizens that work in Malaysia? So if I'm asking this question to you as a Malaysian people, do you want 1,000 ringgit to those migrants? Are they entitled for it? Or we are focusing at least cash assistance towards Malaysian citizens and other assistance to the other migrants. So in terms of search and rescue, we will not discriminate because of lives. We will not discriminate. But in terms of welfare and whatnot, we have to prioritize our own people first. That's my answers. You can call it personal answers, not Nama's answers. Number two is that I'm looking into the ways whereby the embassies of other sending countries or their migrant workers can also work together with the government. At least I'm sharing this information as the temporary shelters, 100 active temporary shelters nationwide. What can they do? Okay, look, you can come to us, look, can we sponsor 2 temporary shelters on your side, focusing on our people? You know the money for me alone is about 40 million for 10 days. Can you chip in 10 million? Of course I will come on this kind of coordination. That's why I say government is not the sole authorities and that can solve every problem. We have to work together. Most of the time, money can be some sort of easy out of the way. Thank you.
That's also a really good question about migration. I think in all of the plans, etc., that we look into, we do look into things like population growth projection, etc. But I think that's one of the reasons why we're looking at inclusive climate action as a starting point. I'll be very honest with you, it's a starting point. In the past, it's very touchy. Kita nak cakap tentang migration, then especially, I take an example lah, Go KL bus. I think many of you have actually taken the free Go KL bus, right? They thought that, wow, fantastic, free bus, kenapa semua bangla? Pardon my use of the term, right? And then they start to actually charge money. And I can understand why DBKL do that. Because it is true, you cannot misuse the taxpayers' money, to Nakma's point, right? To help the people that are not supposed to be part of, sovereign rights now. However, it doesn't mean that it's not being factored in, and I think when it comes to the inclusive climate action, especially the planning and the design part, we do need to sort of include them. However, again, back to the sort of targeted assistance and welfare, we do have to draw a line, because otherwise then it just becomes a big sinkhole. Again, that's personal view, not representative of the organization.
It's Chatham household.
I'm just going to go to some online questions that we've received. So I'm going to go to the mic. Thank you. Fantastic. June here from Kelantan. What about waste management? Who is in charge for coordination or how to plan about more effective management disposal? Kelantanis appreciate the assistance that everyone brings in terms of food, aid, to the state for help, but our state already has existing challenges with waste. Hope this can be in serious consideration as well. Would anybody like to take this question? Over to you, Faisal.
Structurally, authorities, you are looking to PBTs to manage of the waste resources and waste management. They collect these, all these things is to be used for management of that circulation and also disconnection. But when disaster occurs, the compilation, bulks of waste is beyond the extraordinary of what charge. So they have to be coordinations and co-funding activities. So NAMA also gives some funding for operations to the state governments, to the ICUs, to the emotional assistance, so they can carry out this thing effectively. As I said before, state governments carry out their logging business under their purview. So when disaster happens, can they charge everything to federal government? So this is federal state governments working relations, and we have to work about it. So, but simply answer it, it's under activity, and knowing the futures anticipations of what comes after disaster, they have to work together with other resources within the states, within the districts, and within the country. So,
so maybe not many people know that Mr. Malaysia does this mention. So we did, not only in Kelantan or in Ulangan, but also in Gaza. Why? Because risk management, even though it is not directly under our mandate, because it affects public health end to end. So that is our mandate. So what we did, we collaborate in Gaza with the Gaza City Municipality, in Kelantan. So yes, macam kita cakap, risk management during disaster, it will escalate to an amount that is beyond the PBT's control. So this is the role of NGO, civil society, even to individual to help. Gotong royong lah. That's a beautiful one. You go to other countries, gotong royong ni tak wujud. Bukan perkataan tu sebenarnya tak wujud kan. Semangat tu tak wujud. Ada lah di beberapa negara ada. I cannot find the best word to replace gotong royong.
Do we have that on the gotong royong?
Ada.
Kan, saving cats and...
And the best gotong royong I say sorry, COVID. That's the best gotong royong. Ya, betul. Tapi itu gotong royong out of control. Kan?
Got a question for Mercy. What would Mercy's exit strategy for Hulu Langat community be, and how would you measure that the community has obtained resilience?
Exit strategy, because again, Hulu Langat, it's a unique community. They're 13 kilometers here from PRTC. They're basically urban. So there are intellectuals are there, the T20, T5 also there, the B40 also. So our exit strategy is to make sure that the targeted community in society are able to live in a more dignified way. And in that particular context, we identify dignity too is in the realm of survival, money. So our exit strategy is that they are able to secure stable income throughout that activities, whether it's protection of their livelihood activities or it's additional income, etc. So that is the exit strategy. Different community, different program, different project, different exit strategy. What's the second question, maybe? Measure.
Yeah, how do you measure it that they've achieved resilience?
Sama tadi lah. There's no straightforward answer. It depends on the baseline that we have established for that particular community. So if the baseline is to say that they need to have a stable income of 3,000 ringgit per month, dia orang bekerja mungkin 1,700, 1,300 lagi tambah, then we meet the objective. So that is like income. If the baseline is talking about they are able to save themselves and their families within under 2 minutes, for example, if they can do that through simulation, then we meet the objective. So like community, like
I want to add into it that one of these measurements actually to reinstate the post-disaster condition prior to the disasters. So whatever happened before the disasters, you can reinstate back. So that's one of the measurements. Number two, yes, even though we have built back various initiatives under DRR, but it's a very challenging thing. One of the lessons we learned back in 2014, whereby we relocate all these victims from this coastal area, Kuala Muda, Penang, and Kedah. They are fishermen villages. We put them into the land areas of high-level buildings, whereby previously they don't have to pay the joint community fees, and now they have to pay joint community fees, and they lost their income as a fisherman, what they have to do when they stay in these residential areas. So when you design solutions, there's no one size fits all. You have to know their sociologies, their income generations, and the way of work, the way of their life. So then you can only provide better solution. Also another example like orang asli, you give them under Kementerian Luar Bandar, they give them houses, but they do not stay in their houses. So how we do go about it? Yes, sometimes we think we do something good for them, but it's not for them. It's for us. Thank you.
That's the danger of not talking.
Somebody spoke about simulation. There's a question about that. Mungkin tak ramai ada pengetahuan pasal bagaimana kita nak atasi masalah bila hadapi masalah banjir atau bencana alam. Jadi persoalan di sini, perlukah kita kena adakan simulasi hadapi banjir di mana-mana tempat atau di sekolah? Saya percaya dengan pendedahan ilmu pengetahuan ini sedikit sebanyak dapat bantu kita semua, tak kira banjir di bandar atau di luar bandar. Bagi Encik Safi speaking.
Itu cadangan kan?
Cadangan setuju. That's why we do CBRM. We provide CBRM guideline. Number one, kadang-kadang kita nak kumpul soal tu Melayu lagi sedap kan. Kita kumpul ramai-ramai nak buat CBRM, nak buat simulation. Sebenarnya apa itu simulation? Buka handphone, buka Google Map, tengok kita kat mana. Tengok sungai tu kat mana. Tengok jalan tu kat mana. Tengok for the past 5 years jalan tenggelam kat mana. Bangunan tinggi kat mana. That is the simplest simulation style you can do. At the end of the day, you have to take care of yourself. So you know, lepas you tahu, barulah you beritahu saudara sebelah, penjela tetangga dan sebagainya. Kita dah buat fire drill, budak-budak sekolah. Dia pun ada pengalaman ni. Budak-budak sekolah buat fire drill. Anak-anak dah tahu kat mana tempat berkumpul. Bapak, mak yang bekerja dekat bandar, balik ke rumah, dia orang yang mati sebab rumah tanah runtuh. Anak dia selamat. So, kita cerita negara dan sebagainya. Malaysia ni taklah jauh ke belakang. Tapi kita tak share banyak. Dan kita tak ambil tahu sebab polisi-polisi kerajaan inisiatif semasa tidak diiklankan macam McDonald. Satu hari 15 kali iklan, tak ada. Kita tak buat iklan macam tu. Mungkin kelemahan communication on part of the government. Tapi we have some structural part, yes. Can we do better? Of course. Who can do it? We all together.
Thank you. Last question here. Can any of the panelists share on any work done so far on the psychological preparedness and disaster preparedness in communities?
Yeah, a very good question. Mental health, psychological preparedness is very, again, thank you to COVID-19, MHPSS, mental health issues and mental health and psychosocial support is becoming more mainstream. Kalau dulu we got a lot of non-believers. Apa ni semua kena rasa jin ni. After COVID, people understand that it's real. So that's why we have one of our most important program within the sea is called MHPSS. Because psychologically, each one of us has a different level of tolerance threshold towards overcoming trauma, overcoming crises, or how to manage stresses. So, memang perlu, and even though I said it's becoming more mainstream, everybody needs to work together and harder to make it stronger. Memang masalah besar. Not even disaster tau, masa non-disaster time pun. Parents, teachers, budak terjun bunuh diri, banyak kan. So it's a serious thing lah. Maybe something that we can do together.
That's it. Thank you very much, everybody, for your amazing questions. Really appreciate it. So we've come to the end of the session, and ladies and gentlemen, I would really like to thank our panel, Cik Faizal, Ms. Hui, Cik Hafiz, Ms. Wendy. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule, for all the prep, and for sharing your insights and experience. A round of applause, please. Today's conversation has made it clear that while Malaysia has made significant progress in disaster preparedness, there's still much more that needs to be done in making communities resilient. We heard about the role that NATMA plays in national coordination, importance of community-driven models by Mercy, the challenges faced by urban populations by C40, and also the value of traditional ecological knowledge by Wendy. There's one key takeaway that I have from the session is that preparedness cannot be an afterthought. We must plan for it, invest in it, and integrate it into our disaster management strategies. Thank you very much, everybody.
Ask them, say,